A pregnant woman was sleeping rough every day, but when the millionaire saw her, he did something shocking. Liberty Park sat in the heart of the city, surrounded by shimmering glass towers and luxury boutiques. During the day, it was a blur of motion. Executives rushing by, clutching their lattes, street vendors hawking goods, tourists snapping photos. But when night fell, the park changed faces. The streetlights flickered faintly, the benches emptied out, and it became a place where those with nowhere to go tried to find a corner to sleep. Sarah was 26 and 7 months pregnant. She never imagined her life would reach this point. Just a few months ago, she had a small, simple apartment, a job cleaning offices, and a boyfriend who promised he would marry her. When she told him she was expecting a child, he vanished. Literally. He packed his things and left without a forwarding address, ignoring calls, acting as if she had never existed. Sarah tried to keep working, but things got harder. Her belly grew, her back pains worsened, and her boss started complaining that she was moving too slowly. One day, the boss simply told her she was no longer needed. Sarah tried looking for another job, but no one wanted to hire a heavily pregnant woman about to give birth. The rent fell behind. The landlord of the rundown rooming house pounded on her door, yelled, and threatened her. She begged for one more week, but he refused to listen. He threw her meager belongings out onto the street and changed the lock. That's how Sarah ended up sleeping in Liberty Park. At first, she stayed awake all night, terrified, afraid of being robbed, afraid of being assaulted, afraid of going into labor with no one to help. But exhaustion was stronger than fear. She found a secluded bench near a large tree, and that was where she spent her nights. She used an old backpack as a pillow and covered herself with a torn blanket someone had abandoned. Every night, before trying to sleep, Sarah did the same thing. She placed her hand on her belly, stroked it gently, and murmured softly, as if asking for forgiveness. Sometimes she cried. Other times, she just remained silent, feeling the baby move inside her. It was a gentle movement, as if he, too, was trying to say something. Across town, in a sprawling penthouse overlooking the bay, lived Robert Harrington. He was 53 and owned one of the country's largest tech giants. He started from nothing, through immense hard work and sacrifice, and now had everything money could buy: European luxury sedans, international travel, bespoke suits. But Robert wasn't happy. He had been married for 25 years. His wife, Eleanor, died of cancer 3 years ago. They had no children. They tried for a long time, went through treatments, but it never worked out. Eleanor always said God would send them a child somehow, but that day never came. When she died, Robert felt he had lost not just his wife, but also any possibility of having a real family. Since then, he lived on autopilot. He woke up early, went to the office, stayed late, came home, drank a solitary scotch, and went to bed. On weekends, he just worked more. He had no close friends, wasn't dating anyone, and had no hobbies. His life was empty, despite being filled with comfort. Robert always returned home via the same route. He drove past Liberty Park because it was the fastest way. He rode in the back seat of his chauffeured car, scrolling on his phone, barely looking outside. But one Thursday night, traffic was gridlocked. An accident up ahead. The driver turned off the engine and said it would be a while. Robert sighed, looked out the window, and that's when he saw her. A pregnant woman, sitting on a park bench, alone. She had her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wore a worn-out shirt and old sweatpants. She was barefoot, her feet were swollen, and she was performing a gesture that caught Robert's attention. She placed her hand on her belly, closed her eyes, and appeared to be talking to the baby. There was something profoundly sad in that movement, something that touched Robert in a way he hadn't expected. He kept watching. The woman lay down on the bench, curled up, pulled a thin blanket over her body, and closed her eyes. She was going to sleep right there. On the street, pregnant, Robert felt a sharp ache in his chest. He thought of Eleanor. He thought of how many times she had dreamed of having a child. He thought about how unfair life was. He who had everything could never be a father. That woman who had nothing was expecting a child and sleeping on the street. The traffic started moving again. The driver restarted the car. Robert kept looking back as they drove away from the park. He arrived home, but couldn't get the image out of his head. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking, who was that woman? Why was she there? Where was her family? The next morning, Robert woke up with the same restlessness. He went to work, tried to focus on meetings, but couldn't. In the afternoon, he asked his driver to take him past the park again. And there she was, sitting on the same bench, her backpack beside her, drinking water from an old bottle. She looked tired, defeated. Robert watched for a few minutes until the light turned green and the car moved on. This repeated for 3 days. Every time he drove past the park, Robert looked. And every time he saw the same scene. The pregnant woman, alone, with no one to care for her. On the 4th night, Robert made a decision. He asked the driver to stop the car in front of the park. He got out, adjusted his bespoke suit jacket, and walked toward the bench where the woman sat. She looked up at him, startled. She probably thought he was going to do something awful. Robert raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Good evening. I don't mean to alarm you. I just wanted to talk for a moment, if you'll allow me." Sarah looked around, suspicious. It wasn't normal for a man in an expensive suit to approach her like this. But there was something in his eyes that didn't seem threatening. He looked, in fact, concerned. "Talk about what?" she asked, her voice raspy from disuse. "I drive through here every day. I've seen you here several times. And I noticed that you're pregnant, and you're sleeping on the street." Sarah lowered her eyes, embarrassed. She placed her hand on her belly again, almost automatically. "And what is that to you?" Robert hesitated. He didn't know exactly what to say. He hadn't planned this conversation. He just felt he had to do something. "I just wanted to understand. Why are you out here? Don't you have family? Friends?" Sarah gave a bitter smile. "Family that washed their hands of me. Friends who disappeared when they saw I was pregnant and broke. The baby's father walked out and never looked back. And I tried, you know? I tried to work, tried to pay rent, but it didn't work. No one wants to hire a pregnant woman this close to term. And here I am." She spoke it all at once, as if she had held it in for a long time and finally found someone to listen. Robert felt a knot in his throat. "And the baby? When are you due?" "In about 2 months, God willing." "Have you been getting prenatal care?" Sarah shook her head. "I did at first. But after I lost my job, I couldn't afford to go anymore. I don't even have money for bus fare." Robert looked at her belly, at her swollen feet, and felt a mixture of anger and sadness. Anger at a world that allowed something like this to happen. Sadness at seeing a life destroyed before it even began. He realized that every night, before falling asleep, Sarah put her hand on her belly in a special way. So he asked carefully, "May I ask you something? Why do you always make that gesture before you sleep? Putting your hand on your belly and staying silent." Sarah looked at him, and her eyes welled up with tears. "Because I apologized to him." "Apologize? For what?" The tears started flowing. "Because I didn't want him to be born like this, on the street. I wanted him to have a home, a nursery, a crib. I wanted him to be born with dignity. But I failed. And he's going to be born out here with nothing, and it's my fault." She broke down sobbing. High, desperate sobs, full of pain. Robert felt his own tears roll down. He couldn't hold them back. It had been 3 years since he had cried. Not since Eleanor's funeral. But in that moment, faced with this pregnant woman begging forgiveness from her unborn son, he couldn't control himself. He sat down beside her on the bench. He didn't say anything for a while. He just sat there, crying with her. Then, he wiped his face with the back of his hand and looked at Sarah with a determination he didn't know he possessed. "Listen, I don't quite know how to explain this, but I think we met for a reason. I have a very large house, and it's empty. I lost my wife 3 years ago. We tried so hard to have children, and it never worked out. And now, seeing you here, I feel like I have to do something." Sarah stared at him, confused. "What are you trying to say?" I want to take you to my house. I want you to stay there until the baby is born. I'll hire people to take care of you, a doctor, good food, everything. You won't need for anything. You just need to accept." Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. I can't just drive away and leave you here. I can't. Please accept. Let me help you." Sarah was silent. Part of her was suspicious. She didn't know this man. He could be dangerous. He might want something in return. But another part of her, the tired, desperate part that just wanted a safe place for her son to be born, was begging her to accept. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." Robert considered his answer. And when he spoke, it was with total honesty. "Because life gave me a lot of things, but it never gave me the chance to be a father. And maybe this is my chance to do something that truly matters. To save 2 lives. Yours and your baby's." Sarah looked down at her belly. She felt the baby move, as if to say everything was okay. She took a deep breath, and for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. "Okay, I accept." Robert smiled. A genuine smile, one he hadn't worn in years. He stood up, extended his hand to Sarah, and helped her rise. He picked up her backpack, called the driver, and led her to the car. As the car glided through the city's illuminated streets, Sarah looked out the window, still unable to believe what was happening. Robert, beside her, looked forward, feeling that, for the first time in a long time, he was doing something right, something Eleanor would have approved of. "And now, tell me, if you were Sarah, would you have accepted help from a complete stranger? Is Robert doing this purely out of kindness? Or is there something more? Let me know in the comments what you would do in this situation. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. Because this journey is just beginning. Robert's estate was located in a secure gated community, far from downtown, surrounded by massive gardens and high walls. When the car entered through the automatic gate, Sarah couldn't close her mouth. She had never seen a house that size. It looked like something from a movie. Robert led her to the main entrance, where 2 women were already waiting. He had called ahead, warning them that he was bringing a guest who needed special care. The 2 women were Mrs. Gable, the 60-year-old housekeeper with a motherly face, and Jenna, a young, friendly nurse. "Honey, you must be exhausted," Mrs. Gable said, gently taking Sarah's backpack. "Come with me. I'll show you your room and prepare a nice hot bath." Sarah looked at Robert, still unsure. He nodded encouragingly. "Relax. You are home now. If you need anything at all, just ask." Sarah followed Mrs. Gable down wide hallways with marble floors and paintings on the walls. She went up a polished wooden staircase and was led to an enormous room, with a queen-sized bed, built-in closets, a comfortable armchair, and even a television. It had a private bathroom, complete with a bathtub and shower. "This is your room," Mrs. Gable said. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll leave clean towels and some new clothes for you. After your bath, come downstairs to the kitchen, and I'll whip up a proper dinner." Sarah could barely speak. She just nodded, her eyes filling with tears. When she was alone, she sat on the bed, sinking into the soft mattress, and broke down crying. But this time it wasn't just sadness. It was relief, a relief so profound it hurt. She took the longest bath of her life. She stayed under the hot shower for almost half an hour, washing her hair, scrubbing her skin, feeling the grime and exhaustion of the past months wash away. When she got out, she put on the clothes Mrs. Gable had left, comfortable pajama bottoms and a loose, soft shirt. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. She looked like a person again. She went downstairs to the kitchen and found Mrs. Gable setting a table full of food. Rice, beans, roasted chicken, salad, orange juice, and even a slice of chocolate cake for dessert. Sarah ate slowly, savoring every bite. It had been weeks since she had eaten properly. She had been living on stale bread and leftovers she received from people on the street. Robert appeared in the kitchen, jacket off, sleeves of his dress shirt rolled up. He sat at the table, sipping coffee, and watched Sarah eat. He looked satisfied. First thing tomorrow morning, Jenna will run some basic tests on you. Then we'll schedule a trusted obstetrician for a full checkup. Everything is going to be fine, Sarah. You can trust me. Sarah swallowed the piece of chicken she was chewing and looked at him. I don't know how to thank you. Truly. No one has ever done anything like this for me. Robert gave a half smile. You don't need to thank me. Just take care of yourself and that baby. That's what matters. In the following days, Sarah's routine changed completely. She woke up in a soft bed, had a hearty breakfast, and spent the day resting or watching television in her room. Jenna performed daily checkups, measuring her blood pressure, checking the baby's heartbeat, administering vitamins. Mrs. Gable cooked balanced meals and often chatted with Sarah, listening to her story and keeping her company. Robert hired one of the best obstetricians in the city, Dr. Allen, who came to the estate to examine Sarah. He ordered a series of blood tests and an ultrasound. When the results arrived, he called Robert aside to talk privately. Her situation was serious. She was malnourished, anemic, and the baby was slightly underweight. But nothing irreversible. With proper monitoring and correct nutrition, everything will normalize. Robert sighed, relieved. And the delivery? Are there any foreseen complications? If things continue this way, the birth should be normal and straightforward. But I'll monitor closely. Any sign of trouble will act fast. Robert thanked him and returned home with a strange feeling in his chest. It wasn't just relief. It was something more. He was starting to genuinely care about Sarah and the baby, and that scared him a little. As the weeks passed, Sarah opened up more. She told stories about her childhood. The mother who raised her alone and died when she was 18. The boyfriend who abandoned her. The jobs she lost. Robert listened to everything in silence, sometimes asking questions, always respectfully. One evening, after dinner, the two were sitting on the mansion's patio. The garden was illuminated, with the sound of crickets in the background. Sarah placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick. He's moving a lot today, she said, smiling. Robert looked at her belly, curious. Can I feel? Sarah hesitated for a second, but then nodded yes. Robert slowly extended his hand and placed it on her belly. He felt a strong kick. His eyes widened. Wow, he's strong. Sarah laughed. I know. I think he's going to be a soccer player. Robert pulled his hand back but continued to look at her belly. Moved. That simple moment, feeling a life moving, touched something deep within him. He thought about how many times he had dreamed of this with Eleanor. And now, in a totally unexpected way, he was experiencing something similar. Have you thought of a name? He asked. I've considered a few, but I haven't decided yet. I wanted a name that means something good. Hope, maybe. Or a new beginning. Robert smiled. Those are good meanings. Sarah looked at him, serious. Robert, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really do all this? It's not just kindness, is it? There's something more. Robert took a deep breath. He knew this question would come at some point. You're right. It's not just kindness. It's a need. When my wife died, I lost the meaning of life. We had tried so hard to have a child, and it never worked out. And when she was gone, I felt I would never have the chance to be a father, to care for someone, to have a family. And then I saw you in that park, pregnant, alone, apologizing to your son, and I felt like maybe this was my chance, to do something that matters, to be useful to someone. Sarah was silent, processing. Then, she reached out and took Robert's hand. Thank you for being honest, and thank you for giving me this chance. You saved my life, and my son's. Robert squeezed her hand back, his eyes moist. And you both saved mine. From that day on, the bond between them grew even stronger. Sarah started calling Robert Uncle Rob, and he loved it. Mrs. Gable and Jenna also grew fond of Sarah, treating her like part of the family. The house, which was once silent and empty, now had life. It had laughter, conversations, anticipation. But not everything was rosy. News that Robert was sheltering an unknown pregnant woman in his home began to spread. Some employees commented to friends, who commented to others, and soon the gossip reached the ears of people who didn't like it at all. One of these people was Denise, Robert's sister. She was 50, married to a high-powered lawyer, and had always been jealous of her brother's success. When she heard he was supporting a stranger, she was furious. She called Robert, demanding an explanation. "Have you lost your mind, Robert? You're harboring some random woman in your house? What if she's a con artist? What if she's using you? Denise, you don't know what you're talking about. Sarah isn't a scammer. She was on the street, pregnant, with no one. I'm just helping." Helping? Or being a fool? You barely know this. Woman, what if she claims the child is yours? What if she tries to grab a piece of your estate? Robert felt anger rise. "That's enough, Denise. I know what I'm doing. And this is none of your business. It is to my business. I'm your sister, and I won't let you be taken advantage of by a parasite." Robert hung up on her. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Denise started making calls, spreading rumors, inventing stories about Sarah. She claimed she was a drug addict, that she had a criminal past, that she was manipulating Robert for money. These stories reached the ears of others close to Robert, partners, longtime friends, even some company employees. And gradually, the pressure began to build. People he respected started questioning his decisions, suggesting he was being naive, that he needed to be careful. One afternoon, Robert had a tense meeting with his corporate lawyers. They suggested he draw up a protective contract with Sarah, establishing that she had no rights to his inheritance or assets. Essentially, a legal waiver. "Mr. Harrington, we understand your charitable intentions, but you need to protect yourself. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people can take advantage of the kindness of others." Robert listened, uncomfortable. He didn't want to treat Sarah like a threat, but at the same time he began to wonder. Was he being too naive? Was Denise right? Meanwhile, Sarah also began to feel the change in the atmosphere. She noticed that some people in the house looked at her differently, that Robert was more distant, more thoughtful. One night, he came home late from work, exhausted, and barely spoke to her during dinner. Sarah grew worried. Was he regretting his decision? Was he going to ask her to leave? Fear returned, hammering in her head. And the baby, now 8 months along, seemed to sense the tension. He moved more, kicked harder, as if restless. Things worsened when Denise decided to take it a step further. She hired a private investigator to look into Sarah's past. She wanted to find something that proved she was a bad person, a criminal, anything that would convince Robert to kick her out. The detective worked fast. He discovered that Sarah had been arrested once, years ago, for shoplifting. It was small. She had stolen food from a grocery store because she was starving. She spent one night in the precinct and was released the next day, but the record remained in the system. Denise took this information and presented it to Robert during a lunch she arranged at a fancy restaurant. She placed the papers on the table, triumphant. "There. Here is the proof I was right. Your protégé has a rap sheet. She's a thief, Robert." Robert took the papers, read them, and felt his heart sink. It was true. Sarah had been arrested, but upon reading the details of the case, he saw it had been a theft of food, and that she had been released without prosecution. Even so, doubt set in. Why had Sarah never told him? Was she hiding other things? Was Denise right, and was he being duped? That night, Robert arrived home with the papers in hand. He went to Sarah's room and knocked on the door. She opened it, smiling, but when she saw his expression, the smile vanished. "What is it?" Robert entered, closed the door, and showed her the papers. "Why did you never tell me you were arrested?" Sarah went pale. She took the papers, read them, and her eyes filled with tears. I didn't think it was important. It was a long time ago. I was starving, Robert. I stole food, that's all. And I regretted it instantly. But you hid it from me. What else are you hiding? Nothing. I swear. I just didn't tell you because I was ashamed, and because I thought you would judge me, that you would send me away. Robert ran his hand over his face, exhausted. "Sarah, how can I trust you if you aren't honest with me?" "I am honest. I just didn't tell you about something that happened years ago, and that doesn't define who I am." The two stood in silence. The tension in the air was heavy. Robert left the room without another word, leaving Sarah alone, crying. In the following days, the atmosphere in the estate was terrible. Robert barely spoke to Sarah. She spent the day locked in her room, crying, feeling guilty and rejected. Mrs. Gable tried to console her, but it didn't help. The final straw came when Denise showed up at the estate, unannounced, demanding to speak to her brother. She swept in like a hurricane, yelling, saying he was being an idiot, that he needed to kick Sarah out before it was too late. Sarah heard the shouting from upstairs. She felt her heart break. This was it. She was going to be sent away. She would go back to the street, and the baby would be born there, just as she had always feared. Without thinking much, she grabbed her old backpack, shoved the few things she owned inside, and slipped out of the room. She crept down the stairs, trying not to make noise. She walked past the kitchen, where she saw Mrs. Gable crying, and slipped out the back door. She walked through the garden, crossed the slightly ajar gate, and exited onto the street. It was night. It was cold. She didn't know where to go, but she knew she couldn't stay. Not after everything she had heard. Sarah walked for hours until her legs started aching. She sat down at an empty bus stop, hugged her belly, and cried. The baby kicked hard as if protesting. She placed her hand on her belly and whispered, "I'm sorry, my son. I'm truly sorry." Meanwhile, back at the estate, Robert finally managed to throw Denise out. He was furious with her, tired of the manipulation. He ran upstairs to Sarah's room to apologize, to tell her he wouldn't send her away, that he trusted her. But when he opened the door, the room was empty. What now? Sarah is gone, Robert is desperate, and the baby could arrive at any moment. What would you do if you were in her shoes? Would you try to return or keep going alone? Leave a comment with what you think will happen next. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because the ending of the story will move you in ways you can't imagine. Robert rushed downstairs screaming Sarah's name. Mrs. Gable hurried from the kitchen, startled. "What is it, Mr. Harrington?" "Sarah's gone. The room is empty." Mrs. Gable put her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God. She must have heard the fight with your sister. She left, sir. She slipped out the back door about 2 hours ago." Robert felt the floor vanish beneath his feet. 2 hours. Sarah was 8 months pregnant, alone on the street at night. Anything could happen. The baby could be born. She could collapse. She could be mugged. He didn't even finish the thought. He grabbed his car keys and ran out. He didn't wait for the driver. He got into his own car and sped off like a maniac, searching for Sarah in the streets around the community. He drove for over an hour, looking everywhere, stopping at every corner, every park, every bus stop. Nothing. She had simply disappeared. Desperate, Robert called Jenna, asking her to go out and search too. He called Mrs. Gable, asking her to contact local hospitals, in case Sarah had been admitted to one. Then, with trembling hands, he did something he never imagined he would do. He called the police and filed a missing person report. Meanwhile, Sarah sat at that bus stop, lost. She didn't know what to do. She had no money, nowhere to go, and exhaustion was taking over. She began to feel a strange pain in her belly, a pain that came in waves, tightening inside. First, she thought it was just fatigue, but the pain returned, stronger, and again, contractions. Sarah panicked. Couldn't be. She still had weeks to go, but her body didn't care about the calendar. The baby was coming. She tried to stand up, but the pain was too severe. She sat down again, breathing deeply, trying to calm herself. She looked around, desperate. There was no one on the street, no one to help. She picked up the cell phone Robert had given her, but the battery was dead. She had forgotten to charge it. She started to cry, from fear and pain. She held her belly and began to pray. "Please, God, not now. Not like this. Please." But the contractions continued. They became more frequent. Sarah knew she didn't have much time. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a car stopping. She looked up and saw a police cruiser. 2 officers got out, a woman and a man, and approached her. "Ma'am, are you all right?" the female officer asked. Sarah shook her head, crying. "No, I'm in labor. I need help." The officers didn't waste time. The female officer immediately radioed for an ambulance, while the other helped Sarah lie down on the bus stop bench, placing his jacket under her head. "Easy, ma'am. The ambulance is on its way. Just breathe slow. Okay? Everything will be all right." Sarah tried to follow the instructions, but the fear was overwhelming. And deep down, she thought, "Robert must be glad I left. Now he doesn't have to worry about me." The ambulance arrived in less than 10 minutes. The paramedics loaded Sarah onto the stretcher and rushed her to the nearest hospital, St. Jude's Medical Center. On the way, they managed to stabilize her, but it was clear the birth would happen soon. Meanwhile, Robert continued searching. He was about to give up when he received a call from Mrs. Gable. "Sir, they found her. The police found her at a bus stop. She's in labor. They took her to St. Jude's." Robert immediately turned the car around and sped toward the hospital. His heart was beating so fast it felt like it would burst from his chest. He prayed, something he hadn't done in years, begging for Sarah and the baby to be okay. He arrived at the hospital, abandoned his car right by the entrance, and ran to the reception desk. "Sarah, a pregnant woman who just came in. Where is she?" The receptionist checked the system. "She's in the obstetrics center. But sir, you can only go up if you are family." "I am. I'm her uncle. Please, let me see her." The receptionist hesitated, but saw the desperation on his face and relented. She pointed the way. Robert ran down corridors, upstairs, until he reached the door of the obstetrics center. A nurse stopped him. "Sir, you can't go in right now. She's in labor. Please, I need to see her. I need her to know I'm here." The nurse saw the sincerity in his eyes and made an exception. She opened the door and let him enter the anteroom, where he could see Sarah through a glass window. Robert looked and felt his heart clench. Sarah was on the delivery table, surrounded by doctors and nurses, her face contorted in pain. But she was alone, with no one to hold her hand, to tell her everything would be fine. He tapped on the glass, trying to get her attention. And, as if she felt something, Sarah turned her head and saw him. Their eyes met. She started to cry, but this time it wasn't just pain. It was relief. Robert placed his hand on the glass, and Sarah reached out her hand toward him, even though she couldn't touch him. But that gesture was enough. She knew he was there, that he hadn't abandoned her. The delivery was quick, but intense. Sarah screamed, pushed, fought with all the strength she had. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, she heard the most beautiful sound in the world, the baby's cry. "It's a boy," the doctor announced, holding up the child. Sarah broke down with happiness. They placed the baby on her chest, still messy, still crying, but perfect. She looked at that tiny face, at his closed eyes, and felt a love so immense she didn't know it was possible. "Hi, my love. Hi, Mommy's here." On the other side of the glass, Robert was crying too. Crying from emotion, from relief, from happiness. He wasn't the biological father of that baby, but in that moment he felt like he was. He felt that this child had changed his life forever. After everything calmed down, they cleaned the baby, ran tests, and moved Sarah to a room. Robert was finally allowed inside. He sat by the bedside, held her hand, and the two were silent for a time, just looking at the baby who was sleeping peacefully in the crib beside them. "I am so sorry," Robert said, his voice thick. "I'm sorry I doubted you, for letting my sister put those ideas in my head. I was an idiot." Sarah shook her head, also crying. "No, I should have told you about my past. I was afraid you'd judge me, but it wasn't fair to hide it. I'm sorry. There. It's nothing to apologize for. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. You brought life into my home. You brought meaning into my life. And now this baby is here and I want to be part of his life. If you'll let me. Sarah smiled, tears streaming. Of course I will. You saved us. You are family. Robert squeezed her hand tightly, emotional. Then let's do this right. I want to help you raise this boy. I want to be his real uncle. And more, I want you both to keep living with me. Not as guests, as family, because that is what you are. Sarah couldn't hold back the tears. She hugged Robert, and the two stayed that way for a long time, crying, laughing, relieved. In the following days, things began to settle. Sarah and the baby, whom she decided to name Gabriel, meaning man of God, stayed at the hospital for 3 days. Robert never left their side. He slept in an uncomfortable armchair, ate hospital food, but didn't care. He was exactly where he wanted to be. When they were finally discharged, they returned to the estate. Mrs. Gable and Jenna prepared a surprise party, with blue balloons, a welcome cake, and even gifts for the baby. Sarah was moved by so much affection. Robert transformed one of the mansion's bedrooms into a complete nursery. Wooden crib, colorful mobiles, a comfortable rocking chair, diapers, clothes, everything a newborn could need. Sarah had no words to thank him, but she thanked him every day, caring for Gabriel with all the love in the world, and treating Robert as part of the family. As for Denise, she tried to talk to Robert again, but he was firm. He said he wanted no more contact with her until she learned to respect his choices. Denise was furious but realized she had lost. She backed off, grumbling, but deep down, maybe one day she would understand. The months passed. Gabriel grew strong and healthy. Sarah took a part-time job at a store near the estate, but Robert insisted she didn't need to worry about money. He wanted her to focus on being a mother and enjoying this stage. Sarah, however, insisted on contributing. She didn't want to be supported forever. She wanted to show Gabriel, when he grew up, that his mother was a hardworking, dignified woman. Robert respected that, and on weekends he took Gabriel for walks in the park, taught the boy to take his first steps, and read him stories before bed. He became the grandfather he never imagined he would be. 2 years later, life had completely changed for Sarah and Robert. Sarah had gone back to school, taking a technical nursing course inspired by Jenna. She wanted a profession. She wanted to build a solid future for Gabriel. Robert had reduced his workload. He began delegating more responsibilities at the company to spend more time at home. He discovered that happiness wasn't in hoarding more money, but in being with the people he loved. Gabriel was 2.5, running through the house, laughing loudly, calling Robert Grandpa Rob, because he still couldn't pronounce the full name correctly. Sarah laughed every time she heard it, and Robert pretended to dislike it, but secretly he loved it. One Sunday afternoon, the three were in the garden. Gabriel was playing with a ball, Sarah was reading a book in the shade, and Robert was preparing the grill for a barbecue. It was a simple, ordinary scene, yet filled with love. Sarah looked at Robert, who was trying to teach Gabriel how to kick the ball, and her heart felt warm. She remembered that night in the park, when she thought there was no way out, when she was apologizing to her unborn son. And now, she looked at that laughing, running boy, alive and happy, in a huge garden, surrounded by love. Robert looked at Sarah and smiled. She smiled back. They didn't need to say anything. They both knew. They had saved each other. And the most beautiful thing of all was knowing that the encounter, in that park on that night, wasn't a coincidence. It was a gift, a miracle disguised as chance. And what did you think of this story? Have you ever experienced a situation where a simple act of kindness changed everything? Leave the word rebirth in the comments if this story touched your heart. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to believe that there is always a second chance. Because life, sometimes, surprises us in the most unexpected moments. And when we open ourselves up to help, or to accept help, we find paths we never thought possible. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.